The Dolphins in 2023 looked like the best team in the AFC at different points last season. And that sounds like a familiar thing the season after before that in 2022, because the season in 2022 felt like the season in 2023 where they couldn't beat the teams that mattered most, and they fell apart again in December with some bad key losses and some injuries. Yeah, felt like 2022 in the repeat of 2023, if you get what I mean. Because, yeah, they eventually surrendered the AFC East to the Buffalo Bills in a Week 18 winner-take-all game, and when they had to play in the playoffs on the road again, they were one and done and fell to the eventual Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs in one of the coldest games in NFL history. So for the Miami Dolphins, you're wondering what the hell do you have to do to buy a playoff game, let alone a playoff win? Like, what were we doing wrong? What were we doing wrong here? Was it our quarterback, our head coach, something else on our team? What are we gonna do if you're the Miami Dolphins? So it became clear your goal for this coming season is like, you still wanted the AFC East. You had to win that. And not only that, you have to win a playoff game. Is the AFC East and win a playoff game or bust. That's your goal if you're the Miami Dolphins this coming fall. So to get to that goal, some of the things that happened this past offseason, because there were some things that they had to do if they want to actually make some moves and then actually try to improve their team. They had to get into the green because they were in the red when it comes to money. So they had to release various players like corner Xavier Howard and center Connor Williams, so they could clear that cap space and spend. Although it was like very minimal spending. But they managed to extend receiver Jalen Waddle with a big fat 3-year contract extension, which he kind of deserves, I guess. So when it comes to free agency and in the draft, they did lose a couple of key players like in the pass rush, defensive tackle Christian Wilkins to the Las Vegas Raiders, which is, a big loss in the pass rush. And as well, in the opposite side of the trenches, Robert Hunt to the Carolina Panthers. So those were two things that they had to address in the draft, as well as losing edge rusher Andrew Van Ginkel to the Minnesota Vikings. And Van Ginkel caught on in the back half of last year, and he just unfortunately got hurt too. Some of the key additions for this team in free agency was center Aaron Brewer from the Titans, corner Kendall Fuller from the Commanders, so he should be a big help for Jalen Ramsey on the opposite side. And then Calais Campbell comes over from the Atlanta Falcons, as well as Odell Beckham Jr. from the Baltimore Ravens. So some more weapons for Tua Tagovailoa. Then the draft, that's where they did some of their dirty work, probably more of their better dirty work, if you ask me. Like edge rusher Chop Robinson from Penn State, one of, if not the top edge rusher in the draft. So he comes over to bolster a kind of lacking pass rush. And then continuing to address the trenches on both sides of the ball, they went out to get Patrick Paul from Houston. And then to try and better their depth at running back, Jalen Wright from Tennessee. And then they got another receiver by the name of Malik Washington from Virginia. So that rounds out those additions to try and improve this team. And when you look at the Miami Dolphins and what they did, I'd say it was decent. I'd say it was a decently balanced offseason. They expectedly made some cuts and let several players walk in free agency that were kind of getting there in terms of age or underperforming. So they just let them walk to shed some salary. But Miami made up for it with some solid additions through both free agency and the draft. They got younger, but also added some pretty valuable experience to their team. So the additions of Brewer at center and Patrick Paul in the draft as a rotational player, it should certainly help Tua's protection. And then when you look at the other side of the ball, the front seven will feature a somewhat new look, but hopefully a productively healthy one, as replacing the likes of Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel, and as well as Jerome Baker are rookies Chop Robinson and veterans Calais Campbell and others. So when you look at the receiver depth as well, they should be better than last year, because when Tyreek Hill got injured late last year, and I believe he wasn't available in the game against Kansas City in the playoff game, there was barely anyone behind Jalen Waddle. Like, there was no names to speak of that you could come up with the top of your head. And it showed. It really showed. So signing Odell Beckham, and then you sign guys like Malik Washington and Dahaj Washington, they were absolute steals to better help the offense in the event that Tyreek Hill does get hurt again. So the offense certainly got better at particular areas with the offensive line and receiver depth. And I guess to a degree, the defense is a little bit more solid. So looking at some of the key games for this Miami team, you look at the 2 games against the Buffalo Bills. They come fairly early in the first half of the year. Against in week 2, you host them, and then week 9, you go on the road to face the Bills. So those are absolute wins that you need to get if you're the Miami Dolphins, that you got to avenge, because they got swept last year, which cost them the event that eventually cost them the division title. And then you go up to LA to face the Rams the following week, that you go to the Buffalo Bills, and then a key conference game against the Houston Texans could loom if the Miami Dolphins are in contention for a playoff spot or for the division title. Or maybe if they somehow win, they somehow win so much that they're in the positioning for the top seed, maybe even that. So when you look at the Miami Dolphins this coming season, my biggest thing is, like, can you win games against teams with winning records? You know, the actual legit teams, because the Dolphins, they have all this talent. They have a pretty good quarterback. They have a pretty nice head coach. The problem is that they play like frauds against the most legitimate of teams. That's why they get their ass whooped against the likes of the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs. Hell, they got beaten by the Titans, who are not a legit team at all last year. They were a losing team, and somehow they lost to them. So that absolutely needs to change this coming year if you want people like me to take them seriously as a valid playoff contender. So my other thing is, what is it going to take for Tua Tagovailoa to shine when the lights shine brightest? Because, you know, kind of the thing with the last question, how are you going to change the narrative of, you want me to believe that Tua is a quarterback that can come in clutch for this team? Because he's committed more turnovers than touchdowns against these valid teams. Now, there's a little bit more help around him, but just like with the team as a whole, he has to reverse course this year, especially when he's yet to come to an agreement on a contract extension with this team. So for the Miami Dolphins, their chances at a serious playoff run, at least this year, last year, they were derailed by injuries and yet another collapse. But they still have an opportunity to right the wrong in 2024, especially with the Bills team that's undergoing some pretty significant changes. And they've yet to figure out what they're going to look like this coming year. And for the Dolphins, their schedule's not too bad either. And they made some, again, solid improvements this past offseason. But staying healthy and then seeing if those additions and improvements, you know, they execute on the field. And playing up to the competition will be key. So if they do all that, South Beach can be looking at its first AFC East title and its first home playoff game in a little over 15 years.